Hello and welcome everyone. As I record this, it's 2023 and snowmobiling these days has become more expensive and the sport is more difficult to enter than it ever has. Besides the cost of a new snowmobile, they're very hard to get, and that's making older snowmobiles like this one much more important for all of us. This is a 2002 Polaris Classic Touring 600. For anyone looking at buying an older Polaris, this is an important sled to know about. Please watch the entire video and I can share several things about this model that were ahead of its time. First of all, this has the Liberty 600 engine in it with variable exhaust. Of all the Polaris engines, this is probably their best. You want to buy oil injection oil that's designed for the exhaust valve. So you always look on the container to make sure that you're buying oil designed for VES or variable exhaust. In 2002, this is before Polaris introduced their first version of fuel injection that didn't need a battery. So what it has instead of fuel injection is a pair of Mikuni flat slide carburetors which come as a rack. They're attached to each other. These are very good carburetors and are known to be very reliable. They're very good performing carburetors. The Classic Touring is built on the Gen 2 chassis from Polaris, which is actually outdated. Basically everything else was using the Edge chassis. That was kind of their performance model, was the Edge chassis. However, what Polaris did is they gave the Classic Touring the same front suspension as the performance snowmobiles had, so it handles very well. Even though you sit farther back in the seat, the entire sled has a very low center of gravity, and compared to newer designs, cornering is much better than you'd think it would be. Handlebar position in relation to your shoulders is very good. Ergonomically speaking, you put your hands out at just the right position. However, taller riders like me will find that the handlebars hit your knees every time you turn. And what you got to do is learn to move your leg out of the way as you turn with a snowmobile like this. The rear suspension on the Classic Touring is known as the Extra 12. And Polaris called it that because supposedly it had 12 inches of suspension travel. It was a very good rear suspension for the time, but it was heavy. It was complex and it was heavy. A lot of moving parts. Polaris offered this in a 133-inch track, and the lugs weren't very tall. They really considered this a trail-only snowmobile. If you're looking at replacing the track, the Extra 12 suspension will work fine with a 136-inch track. There's something you need to know about that though, because tracks these days come with a much taller lug normally than tracks from that time period. And the Classic Touring doesn't have much room near the front of the tunnel for a taller lug track, and it's the front heat exchanger or the liquid cooling system that really is the bottleneck here. You might be able to get by with a 1-inch lug track, but that would be it. If you're planning on studding this track, you really need to be on that shorter end of that, so 3/4 of an inch or 8/10 of an inch, something like that. Otherwise you're going to run into problems with the studs gouging out the heat exchanger. Speaking of cooling system, this has the older Polaris heat exchangers under the running boards. That cooling system probably has enough capacity to cool a nuclear submarine. It's a very mild-mannered, even-tempered cooling system and engine. The Classic Touring, though, is a heavy sled. I think something like 600 pounds dry. And this thing is a real beast. You don't want to get it stuck. It's very, very difficult to get it unstuck, especially by yourself. There's one more thing, though, that makes this sled special, and if you've got this far in the video, I've saved the best for last. All Polaris snowmobiles equipped with reverse had some kind of a mechanical shifter in the chain case, and there was an extra gear that actually shifted the chain case into reverse. All Polaris snowmobiles except one, this one. That's because Polaris won a lawsuit with Skidoo, and Skidoo at the time had a electronic reverse system. Polaris got to use that through a license agreement from the results of this lawsuit. The Classic Touring liquid-cooled snowmobiles got electronic reverse for 2002. Nothing else did. Everything else had a mechanical reverse for 2002. Polaris still uses that electronic reverse today. And you'll see stickers on the side of the snowmobile. A lot of times you'll see PERC, P-E-R-C, or it'll say electronic reverse. So either PERC or electronic reverse. But really the way that you tell it's got electronic reverse is on the left-hand side of the handlebar will be a yellow button. So you see that yellow button over on the left-hand side of the handlebars. That means this snowmobile has electronic reverse. If It came that way from the factory. If you push that button, ignition system retards the ignition to a certain degree that it actually reverses the rotation of the engine. The engine itself spins in reverse. It's an ingenious system that Skidoo came up with. Polaris was able to license it, and now everybody basically has it. Arctic Cat and Yamaha also have it. It's a great system. If you're looking for an older Polaris, make sure it has the variable exhaust, because you'll get better performance, better fuel economy. It runs smoother. They're just better overall. You want to get to the variable exhaust or VES. Also look for the yellow button if you're interested in reverse, and I would. I mean, all these, having that reverse is really handy when you go to turn a snowmobile around. You don't have to get off. You don't have to pull it around. You just hit the button. And to find out if it's got electronic reverse, just look for that yellow button. For Polaris, they all are yellow even to this day. If you buy a 2001, 2002, or 2003 Classic Touring and it's got the liquid cooled engines in it, be aware that the tunnel is going to be too tight to accommodate a taller lug track, especially if it's studded. But you can use a 136-inch track with the extra 12 suspension, and there's enough room to tighten up that track. Now, you can make extra room in the tunnel. There's ways of doing it by replacing the drive shaft and changing the gear ratio and the chain case. It's a lot of trouble. Maybe you want to do that. It's a lot of time and effort to make that change, and I just haven't been interested in doing that. Overall, the early 2000s for all manufacturers were good years for snowmobiles. They all seem to be really good. I mean, manufacturers at that time were really at the top of their game. Those were the last carbureted engines, and they're the best. Really strong, really reliable, really durable. They last a long time, and they're fun to ride. Right now, they're about the best deal on the snow. This Classic Touring has been a very good snowmobile for us, and I plan to keep it around for a long time because it's been so reliable and so fun to ride. It's hard to get rid of it. It just keeps running. Hey, thanks for watching, and I hope I see you on the trail.